Great, so welcome everybody. So this class is called Shmirat HaGuf, which means taking care of the body. It could also be called Shmirat HaNefesh, taking care of the soul, because Cantor Wendy will be coming in soon to teach that part of it. So I wanted to just give an overview of how important it is in Jewish tradition to take care of our bodies, and it's good we have a doctor here to confirm that, because it's an ancient tradition that we actually, Jews, are supposed to go to the doctor, and there's even a source that says we have to live in a town that has a doctor. If you're in a town that does not have a doctor, you need to move. You need to be in a place that you can rest assured that you'll be taken care of. So what I wanted to do is start with this prayer that's on page 4 to kind of highlight this idea of how important our bodies are and where that understanding comes from. So I'll read it in Hebrew and then in the English translation. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yatzar et ha'adam bechachma uvaravo nekavim nekavim chalulim chalulim galui v'yadua lifnei chisei chavodecha she'im yipateach echad mehem o yisatem echad mehem אי-אפשר להתקיים ולעמוד לפניך, ברוך אתה Adonai, רופא כל בשר ומחלי לעשות. Praised are you, Adonai our God, who rules the universe, fashioning the human body in wisdom, creating openings, arteries, glands, and organs, marvelous in structure, intricate in design. Should but one of them fail to function by being blocked or opened, it would be impossible to survive and to serve you. Praise to you, Adonai, healer of all flesh, sustaining our bodies in wondrous ways. So, according to this paragraph, where did our bodies come from? God, yes. Our bodies are a gift from God. And our bodies have all these openings in them, and pipes and tubes in them, which is how I translate the words that are openings and arteries and glands and organs in this paragraph. So the rabbis had an understanding about all these openings. And in fact, in the Torah, we know in the book of Leviticus, in one of the more graphic portions that we have in the entire Torah, it describes a section in the portions Tazria and Mitzorah in the book of Leviticus, unusual fluids that flow from our body. So there are normal things that flow from our body, and then unusual things that flow, and especially if they flow out of places where they're not normally supposed to flow from. Then these things happen, and according to the Torah, one has to go to the Kohen for not a cure, but for a way in which to become ritually pure from this flow that makes you impure. So in Leviticus, the flows are not about a medical approach or a medical diagnosis, but it's all about the understanding that God is controlling our body, and when things flow normally, then we are in a pure state, not necessarily a healthy state, but a pure state, and if anything unusual happens, then we're not necessarily unhealthy, but we are impure because it's going against the norm. So this paragraph is suggesting more from a medical perspective and a health perspective. This doesn't have anything to do about being pure or impure. It's recognizing that our bodies work in a marvelous way. That with all these orifices in our body, on external and internal openings and tubes and arteries and veins, etc., the fact that all of them are working and none of them are blocked up is a wondrous thing. And it's wondrous not just because the human body, the machine of the human body is great, but it's great because God created it. Okay? Do we know when is the traditional time to recite this prayer?
When you get up in the morning.
Yes, obviously when we get up in the morning, because this is in the beginning of the prayer book on page 4. It's some of the prayers we recite even before coming to synagogue. So this would be the first thing to recite in the morning. Actually, to be recited after we do our business in the morning. And in fact, it's a prayer that is recited throughout the day, traditionally, after one answers the call of nature, if we want to put it that way. So that's something that seems to be very private and could be not something to really want to talk about or share about with other people, and might be seen as dirty and disgusting. It has a prayer for it. And that recognizing then that when we answer the call of nature and everything is working properly, it's something to be thankful about. What? It's a gift. That's right. And the doctor is saying it's a gift from God. That's exactly right. So because we all have the experience of stomach virus, let's say, or anything else like that, we know what happens when things aren't working normally. And God forbid, when we have more serious illness and things stop working and it endangers our health and our welfare, then that's what this prayer is talking about. So it's not just something to wake up in the morning and recognize that our bodies are working, but it's more of an understanding that our bodies are a gift from God, and that we want to thank God for that and recognize what a miracle our bodies are. So another perspective about this is the understanding then, so what responsibility do we have in taking care of our body? And is it just about being thankful that our bodies work and that's all we have to do to take care of our bodies, or do we have more of a responsibility towards taking care of our body and taking care of this gift of God? And so there's one decision from the law committee of the conservative movement that is about cigarette smoking that has the general information that is that fits for this discussion. So two things. One thing is that if we recognize that our bodies are a gift from God, then possibly we might think that all we have to do is pray and be a good person, and then everything will be okay. So in other words, we don't necessarily have to eat right, or we don't have to exercise. As long as we spiritually exercise in the right way, then we should count on the fact that God's going to take care of us. And the rabbis say that's absolutely not the case. You can't rely on prayers to ensure that our bodies are going to be good. We have to be proactive, and we have to take care of our bodies ourselves. So like I said before I started, there's a rabbinic saying that you have to live in a city that has a doctor, to represent the idea that we want to ensure that our bodily needs are taken care of. We have to live in a place where there's a doctor. But there are these other ideas, and the other thing I wanted to explain is about the conservative movement law committee. So as a conservative synagogue, and I'm a conservative rabbi, the conservative movement takes very seriously the whole tradition of Jewish law. The idea that following rabbinic tradition, that we understand that we are based on the Torah and based on how the rabbis interpret the Torah and derive the system of Jewish law from it. And so the law committee of the conservative movement is made up of 30 rabbis and other Jewish legal experts in the field, and they discuss issues of Jewish law that are raised by individual rabbis throughout the world, and they determine whether this is an issue that is relevant enough for them to discuss, that hasn't been discussed before, and they will derive interpretations and decisions based on that. So, for example, 60 years ago, a rabbi asked the question of the committee, is it okay for people to drive to synagogue on Shabbat? And so the law committee deliberated, understanding what the demographic realities of synagogues were 60 years ago and the growth of suburbs, and that even though the tradition is not to drive on Shabbat because it means traveling, and traditionally travel is not done on Shabbat, and it also means turning on a fire, because when you turn on your car, the spark plug turns on and ignites the fuel. All of that is overridden by the minority opinion of the law committee that says because of the greater good of praying with a community, it is better to drive to synagogue for that and violate these other laws of Shabbat for the greater good of being part of a minyan and being part of a community. So that's just one example of many examples over the decades that the law committee has been involved in. So in I think this one is from 1986, something like that, or 88. That a question came up to the law committee: may an observant conservative Jew continue to smoke cigarettes in view of the fact that cigarette smoking is dangerous to your health? Okay, so there, certainly commercials. Maybe there were still commercials on TV in 1986 of people actually smoking cigarettes and I remember growing up seeing cigarette commercials on TV. Now that's not allowed, and I don't think you can do. No, there are alcoholic beverages commercials on TV, but not cigarette smoking. So the question is, certainly when everybody thought that cigarette smoking was good and it's good for you. Even my parents tried smoking because everybody else was smoking. When they first got married, they said, hey, everybody else is smoking, let's give it a try. And they gave it up after a couple of weeks, thank goodness. But my mother-in-law smoked until my wife was born. And the only reason she stopped is that she developed pneumonia. And the doctor said, you better stop smoking. You want to try to ease the pneumonia. And she stopped smoking, and that she hasn't picked it up in almost 53 years. So cigarette smoking has gone from the cigarette companies trying to convince us that it's healthy and good for us, to now everybody knows that it is dangerous to our health. So if it's dangerous to our health, and if the Surgeon General of the United States says that it is dangerous to our health, is it Jewishly dangerous to our health? So there are a couple of issues that arise out of this teshuvah that bears on our discussion about how seriously we're supposed to take our bodies. And this is Rabbi Seymour Siegel, who was the chairman of the law committee for a long time, who wrote this opinion. And the one verse that he refers to is in the Torah, from Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 15, which says, for your own sake, therefore, be most careful, since you saw... yes, so the English translation says, doesn't necessarily impact upon our discussion, but it says in the Hebrew, V'nishmartem ma'od l'nafshotechem. You should take very good care of your body. In the Torah, the word nefesh is the body, not the soul. Okay? So in modern Hebrew, nefesh is soul. In biblical Hebrew, nefesh is body. So the literal translation is, you should take very good care of your body. Okay? And that is the basis for this discussion about how important it is for us to take care of our bodies and to seek out medical advice. And he also quotes Maimonides, who lived about 800 years ago, one of the greatest philosophers in Jewish tradition, one of the greatest scholars in Jewish tradition, was also a full-time doctor. So he worked full-time for the Sultan of Egypt as a doctor, and in his spare time, which was really during the night, instead of sleeping, he would be studying Torah, and he wrote an interpretation, a commentary to the Mishnah. He wrote a summary of Jewish law, which is still referred to today as one of the greatest sources of Jewish law, 14 volumes. And he wrote a philosophy book, The Guide to the Perplexed, all at night after working full time for the Sultan. And so he says, among many things in his summary law code, that it is a positive commandment to remove any stumbling block which constitutes a danger and to be on guard against it. The sages have prohibited many things because they endanger one's life. So anything that might endanger our life, we are supposed to stay away from. And in fact, he would say the opposite as well. Anything that would save our life, we are supposed to do. So he would even say that if a doctor says that you need to eat pork in order to get better from your illness, then you need to eat pork to do so. If a doctor says on Passover that you need to eat something that is not kosher for Passover in order to stay alive, then you need to do that. So the positive of this, anything to save a life, you must do. And the negative, anything that is going to endanger your life, you need to stay away from. Okay? Obviously then, he also quotes an Ashkenazic rabbi, who was Rabbi Moses Isserles. One should avoid all things that might lead to danger, because a danger to life is stricter than a prohibition. One should be more concerned about a possible danger to life than a possible prohibition. Okay, so both a Sephardic rabbi, Maimonides, and an Ashkenazic rabbi, Moses Isserles, both say we need to stay away from things that can endanger our life. So for this case, it's smoking, but it's anything related to our health. We need to avoid bad things that can contribute to ill health, and we need to be attracted by things that can promote good health. So exercise, eating right, etc. All, not only are they good for us and promote good health, but they're also Jewishly what we are supposed to do. So again, to not, he also points out here, not to rely on miracles, to say, I'm just a good Jew, I'm observing the commandments, so I'll leave my health, in God's hands. That's not a Jewish way to believe, because we can never rely on miracles. It's a rabbinic concept. You can never rely on miracles. You need to be proactive to take care of your health. So, any questions or comments about this? Yes, so.
What was the conservative judicial board? What was the result of the? So it's interesting in this introduction. It says this paper was written by the late Rabbi Seymour Siegel. The Committee on Jewish Law and Standards voted to approve it, but the record of the vote is not available. They couldn't find how many people actually voted in favor. But it was approved by the law committee that yes, it is against Jewish law to smoke. So now I don't know whether smoking a cigar would be the same as smoking a cigarette, and whether it's recreational smoking of a cigar, because I think that cigar smoking is not as addictive as cigarette smoking is.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't know if the same chemicals that are in the tobacco in a cigarette, the nicotine is there at the same level of a cigar. Because I know some people, because I know of people who just smoke every now and then a cigar and don't feel the urge to have to smoke a cigar all the time. But I would suggest that anything that is remotely bad for our health, we should stay away from. So now the question could be asked about the alcohol that we have in our congregation out for Kiddush every Shabbat. Is that, should we be doing that? Is it promoting, is it giving the subtle message that drinking is okay? So, I mean, because we do have, there are members of our congregation who are alcoholics and could be tempted by that alcohol every Shabbat, and it takes great willpower to stay away from that. So should we have alcohol out on Shabbat and not? What about the food that we serve at Kiddush on Shabbat and any other time? Should it only be healthful choices that we have out, or the traditional Jewish foods that are not always so healthy for you, right? So we don't have kishka when we have a hot Kiddush sometimes, but it could be argued that some of the kugels that we have might not necessarily be the most healthfully made, and some of the other, there are always healthy choices, but there's also cake and cookies that are out and candy and things like that. So these are discussions that should be had in order for us to promote healthful lifestyle and to promote healthy living. Amy.
So where does the personal responsibility for the individual to be making those choices intersect with the Jewish law?
Right. So where do those choices come with for Jewish law? So I know a lot of people who have for their kids at home, they have the sugar cereal, and it's just Shabbat food, right? So like during the week, the kids are not allowed to eat the sweet cereal. You save the sweet cereal for Shabbat. And the same with cake or any kind of dessert. We don't eat dessert during the week, but on Shabbat we'll eat dessert. So is that a good thing or a bad thing to do? Because Shabbat is oneg. Shabbat is refreshment, is a joy. So how do we celebrate Shabbat? Do we celebrate Shabbat by allowing these kinds of foods that we don't allow during the week? So it's a little departure from healthy living for more of the sweetness that we want to add on Shabbat? Or do we want to be consistent and say, if we're going to eat tofu during the week, we should eat tofu on Shabbat too? And so there's a question, there's a debate within the Jewish community about that. And even when you're on a diet in order to be successful has to be one which you buy into all the time. And and diets should know, anyone who makes a diet should know that people are going to stray every now and then, and that should be built into it. But is the straying because we just can't focus our willpower all the time, or is it straying because, well, we want to celebrate a little bit because it's Shabbat or a holiday, and we want to enhance the celebration that way? So I guess what I'm getting at, healthy living should be a joy all the time. And it's a matter of educating the community into healthful choices and healthy living. And so, I'm always pleased that we have healthy choices out for Kiddush, that it's not just cake and cookies. There are vegetables and healthy dips and healthy drinks that are out there too, so that we have those choices. But it's a matter of overcoming the desire for sweet with the desire to be healthy too. Barbara.
I think you're talking about, it's not a matter of all or nothing. It is so much is good or
right.
Okay. Not having it is not necessary.
Right.
It could be bad, and having to even your veggies.
Right.
You know, you could go where you have too much carrots, you're gonna get it that orange.
Right, that's right.
I mean, you
Right, so everything in moderation, that's absolutely true. Maimonides said that as well, as a doctor. He said the middle path is the best path, not to the right or to the left. Sometimes straying is a good thing, but the middle path, everything in moderation, is really the way to go. So, yes, so, you know, so that making that kind of compromise, just using the Kiddush as the example again, making that compromise is okay to do. It's a Jewish thing to do, as long as the healthful choices are out there, so that people then have the responsibility to make the right choices. And sometimes you need your significant other to poke you in the stomach as you're reaching for something, to suggest maybe you shouldn't be reaching over there, reach over there instead. Or maybe that one is enough, no more than that one. So yes, so that all of that is part of the conversation of how we are responsible for taking care of the health and welfare of our body, because our body is to be seen as a gift from God, as we say every day, at least when we wake up, or as many times as we recognize that things have just flowed from our body. So. Yeah, so you'll see in kosher restaurants, by the way, outside the bathroom, this prayer on the wall. Many restaurants kosher restaurants will have that by the restrooms.
I don't know how relevant this is, but in Jewish, what's the basis in Jewish law? You have to preserve your body, but obviously you're going to go to war sometime where you're going to take a risk. And how do they resolve that? Like, what's more important than...
That's an interesting question. So how to take care of your body when it's also a Jewish commandment to have to go to war sometimes. So yes, so there it's the care for the body is more of a general preservation of life. And so yes, so going to war is the more general. Instead of protecting the whole country, you can make this argument also about protecting your life. But it says that in self-defense, one is responsible. If you know for sure that somebody is coming to kill you, you have the responsibility and the right to kill that person before they kill you. So the Talmud goes on for pages and pages to talk about the specifics of that state. So knowing that, how do you know for sure that someone is coming to kill you? Is it in nighttime or daytime? So being able to see exactly what's going on. What does the person have in their hand for you to know for sure that the person is coming to kill you, etc. So, but if it's clear that someone's to kill you, you have the right to preserve your life to kill them before you get killed. And then by extension, the country of Israel has the right to defend itself if it knows that its citizens' lives are at stake. So yes, so preservation of our body and taking care of our body is also taking care of the health and welfare of the country, even though it involves killing other people and destroying their bodies. So yes, so that's just one example of many when it comes to ethics and morality, where you have one statement overridden by another statement, that it comes into conflict. But the greater preservation of life is the principle that is the overarching principle. We preserve the life of the nation, even if it means killing other people. Now, also by extension, and then I'll give the floor over to Cantor Wendy, by extension in death, this applies to as well, because taking care of our body means respecting our body when the body dies. So that cremation and embalming go against Jewish law, because they are desecrating the body and impeding the natural process of the body. From dust we were created, from dust we return, and anything that impedes in that process of
natural decay would be a violation of this principle as well, because the body, not just in life, is something for us to take care of, but in death as well, to allow the body to return to the earth. But yes?
How about organ donation?
So organ donation, just very quickly, because that could be a whole course in and of itself. But so organ donation might initially be against Jewish law, because you're desecrating the body in order to take an organ out and donating it. But with the concept of pikuach nefesh, preserving a life or saving a life,
Sure.
now that most organ donations are mostly risk-free, or 90%, kidney donation, for example, I'm not talking about a heart donation, but kidney donation or something like that seems to be more successful than not. So when organ donations are with the state of medical technology in 2015, many of these organ donations are more successful than they are not, then it becomes a Jewish imperative to donate one's organs in order to save a life. Even if those most organs have to be alive in order to be donated. So it only works if a body is being kept alive on a ventilator. And if the doctors have said that by pulling the plug, then the person's going to die, the person can be kept alive for a little bit longer to harvest the organs in order to donate. Even in that situation, which looks like it's desecrating the body, it's inhumane because you're keeping the body alive just for this purpose, but the person's going to die anyway. And so you're just allowing the person then to save other people's lives. And the conservative movement at least has said absolutely, and many Orthodox rabbis agree that in that situation, absolutely organs. And there was a famous case of a victim of a terrorist attack in Israel 20 years ago. Alison Flatto, I think was her name, and she was Orthodox from New Jersey, and her family agreed. This happened in Israel. The family agreed to donate her organs to other people. So sometimes 7 people their lives can be saved by all the organs that can be harvested in that way, and it's a very Jewish thing to do. And the only thing I would say is that you make sure that you have a health care directive along with, if you can say on your Maryland driver's license that you're an organ donor. You can have that little heart on there, and that doctors will know that you're an organ donor, but you should also have a health care directive so that the doctors don't go after it. They have to consult with the family first. So I would just say that, I just add that condition to organ donation, because you want to make sure that the doctors consult the family members before they take the organs. Any other questions? Yes, Marjorie.
Not so much in this country, I don't think yet, but in England, there's a movement, basically it's called Back to Nature, where people are being wrapped in a shroud and just left on a hillside. And they die and things.
Right.
Not even being buried in the ground. Has the Rabbinical Council come up with
So that's not a Jewish thing to do. So Marjorie's saying that there's Back to Nature movement in the United Kingdom in which bodies are wrapped in a shroud and just left above ground and let nature take its course in terms of animals and birds getting to the body. No, that's not a Jewish thing, because that's also a desecration, because dust to dust means rabbinically in the ground. Okay, so even though worms are getting to you in the ground, which is just as disgusting to think about and horrifying to think about as birds and animals getting to you, I'm just saying, comparatively, worms, animals, and birds are all the same thing, but the tradition is in the ground. So that could also mean in caves underground. So there are, like in ancient Rome, the Jewish community of ancient Rome, they were buried in caves underground there, and there are some places in Israel as well, in northern Israel, where there are also underground caves where bodies were put. So as long as it's underground, unless the ground doesn't allow for it. So in other words, in Louisiana, Jewish cemeteries are above ground because some of the city of New Orleans is below sea level. So it just makes it impossible to have a cemetery in New Orleans and some places in Florida and other places like that. So if that's the case, then you do above ground mausoleum, because just that's the way it works. But if you have the choice and below ground is possible, then below ground is the way it should be. So being from Philadelphia, there is a Jewish cemetery I know of, Roosevelt Cemetery, north of the city, that has above ground mausoleums, and it's a Jewish cemetery. How can they have that? Well, the Jewish cemeteries are Jewish just in name only and not necessarily halachic. So mausoleums really are not permitted in a place where burial below ground is permitted. So, okay. The only exception that we make to that is in our cemetery. A lot of cemeteries around here, there's a cement liner that goes in the grave itself, so that the coffin goes in the cement liner that's in the hole in the ground, and then the coffin, dirt is filled in all around it, but then the coffin is covered, the liner is covered with a cement top, and then more dirt goes on top of that, and that's more for landscaping issues with the cemetery.